So, it is another glorious winter morning here in sunny Queensland, and today I was planning on uploading a night vision scope video because I just bought the ATN 4K Pro, the small one, the 3 to 14x version, but I forgot to buy batteries for the illuminator. So the battery inside the actual scope is great. It lasts forever. It lasts like 18 hours of use, and it seems to be a pretty accurate claim by the manufacturer. But unfortunately, they don't include any batteries for the IR illuminator. So I've ordered some rechargeable ones, and I'm going to buy some non-rechargeable ones, and we'll do some night shoots and a night hunt, and then upload that video next week, hopefully. But instead of that, this week, to quell my disappointment, we are going to go into my safe and clear out an old project gun that I haven't finished building for several years. It's been sitting in there as a barreled action for a long time, and then I went and bought a stock and did a little bit of work to the stock and put a detachable magazine thing from Atlas Works in there, which was a really nice piece of kit, but I'm just not happy with the stock. So I've recently upgraded said stock, and now I have all of the bits that I need to finish off my little build. It's a 20-inch Howa heavy barrel fluted build, so it's really a high value build, I suppose. It's not a budget build, because when you buy this sort of gear, all the pieces individually are very reasonably priced, but at the same time, once you add them all together, they get pretty pricey. So we'll call it a high value precision rifle build, which can be used for target shooting and hunting. Planning on running the 165 grain Sierra Game Kings, which are from all of the things that I've read, they're really good, accurate hunting rounds. So that will allow me to shoot some steel at fairly long ranges, but also still have good terminal performance on game, if I ever actually get to go out and shoot something big. So yes, that's what we're doing today. Right, so let's have a look at each different bit that we're going to use today, and I'll tell you about what they are and why I've chosen them. So this delightful, handsome looking piece is a Howa model 1500, made in Japan, imported by Legacy Sports in Reno, Nevada, in 308 Winchester. As you can see, the barrel is fairly short. It's not like super duper carbine short or anything, but 20 inches, I guess, is that's what I was going for. I wanted something that handled quite nicely, as well as still giving me plenty of punch. I've found in the past with my previous 308s that I've owned that the cartridge isn't super sensitive to barrel length. If you really are reaching out and touching stuff a long way away, it is good to have the longer barrel so that you can generate more velocity, but it seems to lose somewhere between 15 and 75 feet per second per inch of barrel that you chop off, which isn't really that much. So, and for what I'm going to be doing, I think this is going to be a pretty good all-round barrel length. It'll be, it's not so long that it's like deeply obnoxious to carry around, like the 26 or a 28 inch barrel would just be the worst. So yeah, 24 inches I found is, it's usable, but still kind of long, and I just prefer a shorter package, and aesthetically as well, I think a short fat barrel is just a delightful thing to look at, especially with a big chunky scope on top. So the stock that it's currently in is a Boyd's Pro Varmint stock. And it has a Atlas Works detachable magazine base in it, with a little limb saver soft sticky butt pad that comes with it. I have changed the colour of it. I sanded it back and sprayed it. It was black when it came to me. I ran it as oiled timber for a little while, just as a different look, to see how I felt about that, and I liked it, but I don't know, I like the sandy colour a lot more than I like the wood now, so ended up spray painting it, but it's quite soft, and I don't really want to deal with soft wood changing tolerances on me when I'm out in the field. I've decided that I either had to get this one bedded professionally, because I just know that I would ruin that job. So I either had to take this to a gunsmith and then still deal with the tolerances of the wood moving around a little bit, but have the action bedded in there nicely with a bit of acra glass or whatever it's called, with the aluminium pillars, and pay to get that done and hope that the gunsmith does a good job. Or I could cut my losses and move on and just grab a chassis type stock for it, and that's what I've decided to do. So I'm going to sell this stock with the detachable magazine base. The product that Atlas Works has made is very, very nice. It's kind of a shame to let this go, because this bottom metal is actually nicer than the bottom metal on the stock that I'm putting on this gun now. I prefer this one, but just to avoid any future annoyances, I think I'm going to stick with the chassis style stock that I've bought. So that's the old Howa 1500. I think, not 100% sure, could be mistaken. I'm usually mistaken, but pretty sure that these 1500 actions are based on an older model Seiko action. And I've owned a 1500 in 3006, and it was a great gun. It was very accurate. Sold it because I wasn't using it, and then down the line bought another 308, which was this one, and I didn't use it. So, so it seems to be a perpetual thing with heavy calibers for me. I just never get around to using them. But yeah, very, very good quality action. The barrels, I've sort of found that they kind of need to be shot in a bit. They're not. They're supposed to be sub-MOA guaranteed with match ammunition, but I found that usually that will come after, a box or two of ammo to sort of do your own sort of self-lapping of the inside of the barrel. These are very cost-effective guns. That's probably the main thing that attracts me to them, the value aspect of the Howa. I think I paid just a whisker over $500 for this barreled action, and to get a heavy varmint barreled 20-inch fluted, threaded, gloriously well made piece of steel from Japan for $500 is pretty well unheard of. In my books, your mileage may vary. This is probably controversial because most of my audience is American, but I would much rather have a Howa than a Remington 700. Sacrilege. But the truth is the truth. I would also rather have a Land Cruiser than a Jeep, and I've owned Jeeps and I've owned Remingtons. So that should put that into perspective for you. But yeah, very happy with the presentation of it. It looks like it's been finished very well, and currently it is unfired. So after I've done this build and I do eventually get out to the range to shoot it in, I've got a couple of boxes of 7.62 by 51 old military surplus crap, and I'm going to run that through the barrel and have a whale of a time doing that. And then I'm going to, once I've shot the barrel in a bit, I'm going to switch over to my target and hunting rounds, which are the Outback Ammunition 165 grain Sierra Game King 308s. So yeah, that should be a time and a half. As far as optics go, I have decided that I'm going to run my Burris on this gun until further notice. This scope isn't really useful for any of my other guns because it only focuses down to 50 meters. Well, the focus is correct, that you can focus up really close and shoot stuff that's close to you, but the parallax error is, not correctable precisely. So for the type of shooting that I normally do, I kind of need that to focus all the way down to 10 meters. So this is going to be my, and having a 50 meter parallax isn't a big deal for a 308, so it's going to live on the 308 until further notice, until I get something else for it. I have been very happy with this scope so far. I haven't really used it much, but I've run it side by side with a bunch of other scopes in previous videos, and the clarity of the glass is very nice. It's wonderful. And these flip up scope caps, they're not terrible, they're not fantastic. They're better, in my opinion. These are nicer than the, forgotten what they're called. I will put the name here, that I don't like at all, that came with my Schmidt & Bender, which was profoundly disappointing. But anyway, whatever. The scope caps, that is, not the scope. The scope's amazing. But this is a 3 to 15 by 50, and it is a 34mm tube, so it has a whole bucket of elevation that you can wind out of these turrets. It's an MRAD scope. It has a Milhash type reticle, and it's not illuminated, which I feel like was probably a mistake. I probably should have got the illuminated model, but this was a little bit cheaper than the illuminated model. Made in the Philippines, not made in China, and for whatever reason that still matters to people today. I know there's some garbage that comes out of China, but there's also some really nice stuff that comes out of China. But yeah, this is made in the Philippines, and I think there is some connection between the Burris XTR2 series of scopes and the Steiner military grade scopes. I think there are some differences. I don't think they're exactly the same. These turrets, you get to have a bit of a squeeze on these turrets, and you know that it's not a military grade turret. They're perhaps I have been spoiled too much by my time with my Schmidt & Bender, but what can I say? These turrets are a little bit mushy. just a little bit mushy. But yeah, it comes with lens caps, obviously, a nice little cloth, a couple of Allen keys, your literature, warranty card, all that jazz, and a sunshade, which I like. I love it when scopes come with sunshades. That's good. Schmidt & Bender didn't come with a sunshade, and it was like 150 Aussie dollars to get the sunshade, plus a ridiculous amount of postage because it had to come from Europe because no one in Australia sells them. So yes, that rant will continue another time. But great looking piece of gear and excellent glass, especially when you buy a mid-range scope like this. This I think they retail for somewhere around the $1,000 mark over in the States, but here this you're looking at about $1,600 for the big girl. And I bought a nice old military surplus X-Tech 5 MRAD 34mm mount, so hopefully it fits in there, and we'll be running 5 MRAD of extra elevation for my little PRS gun. As far as the stock goes, this is a very good looking piece of gear. I'm very excited about this. It's a little bit more than I would ordinarily consider spending on a stock, but I think for this build it will add a bit of longevity to it. I won't have to upgrade this in the future at all. So, and it sort of saves me dicking around with a whole bunch of gunsmithing that I don't have to do now. So this is a KRG Bravo, very similar pattern, I suppose, to the Boyd's Pro Varmint, classic sort of precision rifle stock. It's not quite as pistol grippy, I guess, as some of the other chassis. KRG does the Whiskey 3 as well, which is a fantastic chassis with a little bit more adjustability. But this one is their budget line. I paid 695 Aussie dollars for it. And hopefully I'll be able to recoup a little bit of that when I sell the other one. I'll probably sell this one fairly cheap because it's kind of a bit of a weird thing to be selling. So we'll see how we go with that. But as you can see, the trigger group looks a little different. This one appears to be some sort of, it's either polymer or milled aluminium, but I suspect it's polymer. It's probably a little bit lighter than the timber stock. M-lock on the front with sling swivel stud and a whole bunch of different spots where you can attach all sorts of jazz. In the pistol grip underneath it, you undo this Allen key and the pistol grip is hollow, so you can put batteries in there for your Ninox or for whatever it is that you bring in, your rangefinder and your Kestrel and all that sort of stuff. Batteries go in there. You can remove this little piece under here so that you can get the hook type bag rider, bag grabber type hook that you might want if you are shooting off a bipod and rear bag, which is how I like to shoot. I'd much rather shoot prone off a bipod and rear bag on the ground than I would off a bench. And it also comes with the adjustable cheek riser, which is pretty cool. It doesn't really click. It's kind of like undo it, pull it out, and then secure it by tightening that little nut up again. So toolless, but yeah, pretty good. Pretty happy with that. and it also comes with a bunch of spacers to space it out. So I think I will actually use a few of them because it looks like a fairly short length of pull. Yeah, it's probably 2 or 3 fingers length of pull shorter than the standard Boyd's one is. And this one might have been a bit small for me too, so I might put all of them in there. I think it comes with 3 or 4, looks like 3 of different widths. So we'll chuck them all in there and see how that goes. And we can test and adjust. That'll be good. Very good. I have 2 AI MDT magazines. These are polymer ones, and they are a nice similar colour to the stock. They're not quite exactly the same, but it'll be a nice close match. So we'll get them all mounted up, and that should run well. I don't really need 2, I suppose, for firepower reasons. It's really for in case I break one or one fails on me, or if I'm shooting in some sort of precision rifle competition and I need to have a spare mag for a mag change or something like that. This will serve me well. So yeah, looking forward to getting on the range with these. Should be a good time. Need to find a range that will let me load them up though. Lots of the ranges in Australia only allow single shots, so I may have to venture out west a little bit. Let's get this bad boy out of its old pants and into a new set of strides. So here we are. Looks pretty good. No visible rust. It's grabbed some of the paint from the stock. Probably should have taped that off, but yeah, not too bad. Give the old girl a rub down. Pull it through with a bore snake. Get any factory standard goo out of the barrel. Nice big, what I'm going to guess is a 1x20 thread. It's quite fine, but very well cut. And a big ass hole. Hopefully one day they will allow suppressors for use by civilians, but I don't think so. So it may be a very long time before I ever thread anything onto the end of this thing. The 1500 barreled action comes now with the hacked, H-A-C-T, Howa adjustable something trigger, competition trigger maybe, I don't know, but it's quite a nice trigger. Feels good to use to me at the moment, so I think I'm going to leave it stock. It's not as nice as my Mossberg trigger, believe it or not. I have a 223 Mossberg which will be making appearances on the channel sooner or later, but that thing has a wicked trigger. It just feels so nice. And this one's not that nice, but it is still pretty good. So I'm going to leave it alone until I've had some time behind the wheel of this thing, and once I have decided whether or not I need it to be heavier or lighter, I will just leave it alone until then. Tell you what, this dirty old bore snake has been through a few barrels. Previously I have owned, as far as 30 caliber goes, I think the only 2 that I've owned were the Howa, that other 3006 Howa that I had for a while, which was a stainless and synthetic stocked one. It was like a marine grade gun, I guess. That was what they were calling it at the time. I think it's changed since then. It's just a stainless sporter action. And I also owned, I think that one was a 22 inch barrel on that one. It was a fairly light gun, had a severe kick to it because it was light and it was shooting big heavy hunting projectiles in that 3006 caliber, so it had a lot of powder to burn behind it and a big old thump and not much weight to absorb it. And the next 308 that I got after that was a Remington 7600P, which was a pump action with a 10-shot mag that I put on it, and that thing was a real riot. It had a 16-inch barrel, and if anyone's ever fired a 308 out of a 16-inch barrel, you'll know what I'm talking about. We used to take it out at night and just blast away with it, and you'd get these gigantic fireballs. It was a very fun gun, but not very accurate and not exactly super reliable either. The finish on it was pretty much rubbish. It had some sort of Parkerized finish on it, and it's quite humid in Queensland and up in the Northern Territory where I was living for part of the ownership time of that gun, and it would rust in like 30 seconds. You would wipe it down with oil, get all the surface rust off it, and think that you're good to go, and then you'd look back at it and it was already rusting again as soon as you wiped the oil down to like a low sheen. It had to have like a real thick layer of oil on it all the time, otherwise it would just start rusting, and I was very unhappy with the finish on it. So it was kind of like a real clunky, not very well, like low tolerance gun, that one. Obviously made for a specific purpose, which is probably good for being a simple gun that you can throw in the back of a police cruiser and use it to get the party started when you need it to, but you know, for anything other than that, it wasn't really a good buy. I'll probably annoy a few people by saying that, but whatever. Come at me, bro, in the comments. Take a dump on me, I dare you. I'm all about it. Right, that's looking pretty good. Got rid of all the old sticky paint. So how I did that, I actually had to scrape it off. So any time that you're scraping something off something else, try and scrape it with something that is softer than whatever the host material is. So I just used this here bore brush, which has a brass tip on it. So the brass is softer than the hardened steel of the receiver, and that allowed me to scrape it off without damaging it and scratching up the finish and compromising it, because if you scratch it while you're trying to remove the paint, you're going to end up allowing a little bit of rust access, I suppose, and particularly when this piece of the gun is not exposed and easily cleanable. If I wanted to pull it out of the stock, I could, but I would have to re-zero it and do all that sort of stuff. So ultimately what I want to do with this is make sure all the paint is off so I get a nice clean fit, and clean it and leave a nice heavy film of oil and rub it in so that it sort of gets absorbed by the steel, and I don't have to worry about anything untoward growing on it. So the stock doesn't really come packaged very well, or at least mine didn't. Usually if you buy this as a package from Howa, you get a magazine with it as well, and it probably comes in a much nicer box. But mine just came wrapped in corrugated cardboard because I've bought these over time. I didn't buy this as a kit. This is a bunch of parts that I have bought individually. So there's that to consider. But comes with spacer set. What else have we got in here? Some sort of Picatinny rail section. You beauty. That means I can use my sick Vipertech bipod on it. I didn't know it came with all of this stuff. That's great. I nearly bought a rail for it, so yeah. I just noticed that it had a sling swivel stud on it, so I figured I would just use my Harris, but if I don't have to, I won't. Good, good. QD sling cup, juicy. I don't have a QD sling. I like to run 2-point slings on most of my stuff. It's just more comfortable for me. That's just the way I like to run things. But yeah, looks like there's only one QD cup here. So unless there is another one hidden on the gun somewhere already that I don't know about, but it looks like you can pop it in the back. Yeah, alright, and some assorted paraphernalia. Get screwed. No instructions. Alright, guess I'm on my own. Probably shouldn't really need instructions, it seems like it's a pretty simple job, but if you have a look inside, we've got some weirdness going on, and the stock itself isn't fitting up quite square. I'm assuming that's because the screws have to come out and be aligned properly. So let's pull them out and see what happens. We've also got this, whatever this might be, washers and screws and things everywhere. So hopefully we can figure out what is actually going on here. It looks as though they have split the stock in half about here, and that's probably so that you can buy, if you decide to upgrade, you can upgrade to the Whiskey 3 stock or whatever other KRG product that is compatible with this, which I don't know which that is, so why would it be the one that I don't have? Here we go. It's alright, boys. Don't do panic. This. What is this, KRG? As you can see, after some fiddling and faffing about, I've figured out how to mount the Picatinny rail up the front. I've just used 2 of these oval shaped Badoobas with the provided screws and the provided rail, and it fits up there quite snugly. Feels good and strong and solid. It is polymer, it's not steel or anything, but yeah, it'll be fine for a bipod, I think. Looks good to me. And from looking at it, I reckon what we're going to do is use these longer screws, go through there into the stock and bolt this forward piece onto the stock, onto the chassis system rather. We'll call this the actual chassis system. This is the aluminium backbone of the gun, if you will, the right way up, of course, like so. And from what I can tell, I'm not sure why, but this has 2 little holes and 1 big hole, and it seems like this is a floating washer that slides along the rail that is presented to you, and you can either bolt it through up the front or further down the back. You can flick it up over and use it as a washer that will give you a solid mounting point to the chassis for the barreled action. So that's what I'm going to do with it. We're going to use this big thumper here, pop him in there, and that way we'll have steel on steel and we won't be crushing polymer. I'm not 100% sure if that's right. We'll have to double check that later on and see how we go, but it seems like that's what it's intended for. I'm not sure why it has those 2 threaded holes. Maybe it fits different action as well, and you just have to move it around, but I'm not entirely sure. So that's what we're going to do with it. I can't see any other possible use for it with my setup, unless of course I'm missing some parts, which I don't think I am. So we're going to run with that. But before I do all of that, I have to put my trigger guard back on. Trigger guard needs the stock to sort of find its place properly. So we'll go in there like that. We'll slide you up in here like this. Bolt it all up together. There's a nice little steel anti-compression ring in there to protect the polymer. It looks like it's a good heavy-duty polymer, but you wouldn't want to be putting any crushing forces on it. So small amount of blue Loctite, I think, is the go. I don't want anything coming loose on this as time goes on. So the blue Loctite is the removable stuff, which is the stuff that you want. It'll stop your whatever it is that you're worried about spinning out on you, but it also won't jam it up completely if you ever try and remove it. So blue Loctite is what I always use on anything that may that may need to come apart again, and I don't use too much of it either. It's just a little tiny dab. Dab, 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 dab. Starting to look a bit more professional now. So to get the rail on and to bolt the little skin on the bottom here to the chassis itself, you have to sort of put those 2 bolts in there and let them jiggle their way down while it's not completely mated to the chassis itself, and then wind them in, and that pulls the chassis down towards the skin. Otherwise they kind of go in on an angle, and you don't want that. So it won't be doable that way. So yes, after a little bit of messing around, KRG, some instructions would have been great, but figured out. So that's all tightened up and pretty well ready to go. Still have several pieces that I don't know what they do, so I'm going to keep on trucking and see what happens. I had a quick look online to see if I could find any instructions just to double check what I've just done, but I wasn't able to find any for my particular barreled action. They have for the CZ, they have for the Remington 700 and for the Tikka T3, but not for the Howa that I was able to find. The only thing I'm really not happy about at the moment is, if you look carefully here, you can see there is a little tiny amount of flex in that front part. It's only right in the front part where it actually joins up to the chassis. It doesn't actually move, so that's just me being finicky, I think. But I would think for borderline $700, it would be nice to have maybe 2 more screws just right next to the trigger, which I may actually do myself at some point. Maybe we'll take it down to the gunsmith or something and have 2 holes drilled in it with threads tapped in so that I can screw that front bit up nice and tight and hold it there still. But for now, good as gold. Good enough at least anyway. I like that they've used hex screws, Allen head screws for everything instead of like the Boyd stock is Phillips screwdriver, Phillips head screwdriver, star pattern stuff. Hex is just way better. Seems like it never really strips out on you. Whereas a Phillips head, hidden behind a big rubber butt pad, it is almost certainly going to give you dramas. So, right, there you have it. 3 spaces on. Push that length of pull out a little bit. I like that. That's definitely the way to go. Now, before I forget, torquing up my action screws, I'm going to torque them up to about 60 with my Wheeler fat wrench. 60 and 60. So, just put the bolt in, ran it a couple of times to see if it fits. Silky smooth, all good. Chuck the magazine in, seems good until you jiggle it a bit, and I jiggled it a bit and it just fell out at the front. So what I have figured out is that this piece, the piece that I didn't put in before, it slides over the lip just in here and tightens up that magazine well. It's a perfect fit. It's obviously where it's supposed to go, but I didn't know that because I don't have any instructions. So I've got to put it all back together again. Have a look at that. That's better. So that's all torqued up. Magazine fits good. It's got a little bit of a wobble to it, but most poly mags do, I guess. But yeah, doesn't fall out now. Nice positive locking bolt. Lovely. Ready to rock and or roll. So I'm going to whack a bipod on the front and use that scope level kit, and I think we'll be pretty much done. We'll have a nice new precision rifle ready to go. So, there we are. Here is the finished product. Scope is all leveled up. Got the bipod on the front. Lovely Vipertech carbon fiber CT1. Very nice little piece. Magazines in there. Colours match nicely. It's ever so slightly different, but I reckon once I wear it in, get some gunk and some slime on there, it'll all come up looking pretty good. So, nice, reasonably short overall length. It's quite light. That may prove to be a negative when it comes to precision shooting, but who knows. So the length of pull adjustment with all 3 of those little extendo pads in there feels good. Got the eye relief set nicely, and that 5M rad sight houses that 34mm tube with tiny millimeters to spare. So there you have it, a high budget build. Oh, not a high budget, sorry, a high value build. So $700 for the stock, a couple of $100 for the bipod, $1,500 for the scope, and for the barreled action, you're looking at about $500. So hopefully in the coming weeks we'll be able to get this out to one of the longer ranges. I'm thinking I'll make a trip to Ripley down south of Ipswich, because they've got a 1,000-yard range down there. I don't know if I'll be able to use it or not, but we'll see how we go. Even if I could, I don't know if I'll hit anything that far, but I'll bring the Crony and I'll bring the ballistic apps, and we'll get some hits on steel. So stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching. Smash that like button and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.